I think I'm entitled.
You want answers.
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
Police believe the gunman fired from a rifle, shotgun, and a pistol, injuring more than a dozen and killing 2 children, ages 8 and 10. In the hours ahead, investigators will try to answer what, if any, connection the shooter had to Annunciation Catholic School. Here's what investigators have said so far.
Does not have an extensive known criminal history, and we are looking through information left behind to try and determine some type of motive. The question was, do we know if the shooter was a former school employee or a former student? We don't have that information.
This tragedy happened during a mass that was supposed to be celebrating the first week back at Annunciation Catholic School. In addition to the deaths, 17 other people were injured, 14 of whom are children.
That was the report as it began to unfold yesterday, and most of it stands the same today. 2 of the children in critical condition. That shooting, as these children were sitting in their Catholic Mass in the pews, and a shooter from outside shooting through the windows, could not even see the victims, just firing wildly. Police say using everything from a shotgun to a rifle to a pistol. And 2 of those children in their Mass died in their pews. And once again, the left is rushing out to blame lack of gun laws and everything else, ignoring other issues. We're going to break it down for you. It's not going to be easy. It's tough when you're talking about kids, but it's infuriating every time something like this happens. Before bodies are even in the grave, the left is shouting for, we're going to need more gun laws. Do they know we have a law in the book that you cannot commit murder? That law is first and foremost, regardless of your gun laws. That law got broken. All right, thanks for joining us. Hour number 1, Larry Connors USA, August 28, 2025. Reminding you when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. How do you do that? You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Larry Connors USA, Rumble, or Facebook. And everything goes up as a podcast when we finish. And in fact, you can always pull it up at NewsTalkSTL podcast, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, or any other podcast platform you choose. Simply search Larry Connors USA. We're there. And reminding you, if you do listen or watch at a later point, please push share, send it on to others. You are our multiplying factor. Get them involved in our program. I appreciate you doing that. I remind you, with Larry Connors USA, we bring you news, analysis, opinion, and education. You leave each hour with more knowledge and information than you had as we began each hour. Now make certain of that. Give you a preview of what's coming up in the next hour. The Chicago mayor says, me fighting against Donald Trump is like trying to fight the Jim Crow and slavery movement. That's how big of a martyr I am in Chicago. What is he drinking? And later this hour, vaccines, especially for your children. Myths versus fact. And there is a question being raised about this shooter, identified as transgender. We don't have medical details if this shooter was already on some transition drugs, but RFK Jr. has made it clear we're going to take a look at how those drugs can affect the psyche, the mental stability of these children. But then again, the Minnesota mayor, he gets to the scene, he's being questioned, and where does he want to put the blame?
We have more guns in America than people. Mm-hmm. Say it again. We have more guns in America than people. Why? Why is it so easy to get a gun? Why is it so easy to get a whole heap ton of guns? Why is it that you can buy a gun virtually every month if you wanted to? What good is that? You know, this has gone down in other countries, and they say, you know what, we're not going to allow this anymore. We don't want this to happen anymore. We're going to do something about it. It's got to be out of love for our kids, a common kind of humanity that you understand how deeply I love
and how deeply I love my kids, my grandchildren, is the reason I have a gun to protect them when needed. If guns were the issue in this nation, he just said we have more guns in this nation than people. If guns were the issue, you would damn well know it. It would happen every time. And we've seen this happen before, somebody gets a car and they decide to drive up on the sidewalk and just start mowing down pedestrians. Was there a violation of the car? Yeah. And killing people or injuring people. Are we going to start banning cars? Of course not. But the other thing about Minnesota, it is one of these blue states, and they have put in place so many different gun laws, and yet they still say we might need more. I want you to listen how CNN even lays out what gun laws are in existence in Minneapolis and Minnesota.
And when you look at this in terms of the school and just Minnesota in general, you know, I was looking at the laws. Governor Walz signed stronger laws into place not that long ago. The state requires checks for purchase of guns. You need a permit to buy a firearm and also to carry it in public. There's a red flag law. It's called the Extreme Risk Protection Order, as you know. It allows family members, law enforcement to file a petition restricting somebody from having a gun if they're a danger. But it raises the question of, in a state where there are these protective measures in place and a red flag law that clearly did not stop this person from accessing guns, what else could have been done here to help?
Exactly. CNN just posed the question. What else could have been done? What other gun law would have prevented any of this from happening? She went through the litany of everything they have, including the red flag law. I have concerns about the red flag law in the sense that someone doesn't like the way I cut my grass and they call in police and say, by the way, he's got guns in his house. You might need to be worried when you go to talk to him about cutting his grass and blowing the clippings onto my yard. But they have that in Minnesota and Minneapolis. They have all of these. Did it stop what happened? Of course it did. Would adding another law in that litany change anything? No, it would not. But Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from Minneapolis, Minnesota says, but we need a federal action.
Again, we have to remember why federal legislation is important, because we do live in the United States of America. We are interconnected, and so constantly having these conversations on a local level or state level and not having them on a national level creates loopholes for people who are deranged to explore. And so I am calling on my colleagues when we come back into Congress for us to put our differences aside, for us to recognize that partisanship is not saving our children. And, we are uniquely finding ourselves in this danger as a country here in the United States. So we uniquely need to figure out a way to resolve this issue and come to a common sense way of solving this.
What is she suggesting? Federal law? Get rid of the Second Amendment. That's where they're going with it. That's where they all want to go with it, to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. Now, reference a motive for yesterday. If you listen to the Minnesota police chief, it's not really clear.
So the question was on a possible motive and a relationship to the church or to the school. I have no information to share on a motive other than saying, again, that there was some sort of manifesto that was timed to come out on YouTube. It's been taken down, and our investigators are going through that to try and develop a motive from that. Additionally, there are these 3 search warrants happening in residential locations, and we may very well, find more information or writings that could give some sense to that, but we don't have that now. And I cannot confirm a relationship between the suspect or his family and this church at this time, but that's obviously something we're looking very closely at.
Now, I understand in the beginning that's true, but also in the beginning he referred to the manifestos. So they have a motive inside that. And they also know if they looked at the guns, they were etched with words like "for the children" and etched with "kill Donald Trump." So there's a lot of hate there. It could be hate in general, but it could be more. But there's another part of the story they kind of want to gloss over. They do not want to get into details because it points to how what they've been doing on the left, using rhetoric to preach hate.
Reactions are pouring into yesterday's school shooting, and as usual, some people out there using the opportunity to play politics. Former Biden press secretary Jen Psaki spinning this tragedy into an attack on President Trump's crime crackdown in Washington, D.C. Peter Ducey joining us live at the White House with more on this. Hi, Peter.
Bill, good morning. Jen Psaki did not wait for any information at all about the shooter or about the motive before she took to X to post the following: prayer is not freaking enough. Prayers do not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. And then, when kids are getting shot in their pews at a Catholic school mass, and your crime plan is to have National Guard put mulch down around D.C., maybe rethink your strategy. Minnesota is blue statewide, and the governor, Tim Walz, wasn't ready to make such a big jump.
Receiving a call from President Trump, who was with his leadership team of the Attorney General and the Vice President, expressing their deep condolences amongst the horror that happened and an offer to provide the support to the folks here in Minnesota of what's needed.
And you know what? I'm glad he took time to point out that the president called and is interested. That's Minnesota Governor Walz, and he did not jump onto that train of calling out for the guns. He will, but he didn't at that point. But there is another dirty little secret that they're trying to keep from you. This guy identified as transgender, whether or not he was undergoing puberty-blocking drugs or we don't know at this point. But they don't want you to go in that road. In fact, the example from the Minneapolis mayor, I should say.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity. We got to be operating not out of hate for any group, but out of a love for our children. That's where the focus needs to be right now. A love for our kids. Seeing these kids, not just as somebody else's kids, this horrific thing happened, but what if it was our own? How would we feel then? So, look, we need to be standing up for every community out there. Our Catholic community, too, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. But simply saying the guy's a transgender and might have been on puberty-blocking drugs does not condemn and castigate the entire transgender community. However, we do know that these kids are being sold on the idea that you might not be the right sex. Maybe you'd be happier if we got you on puberty-blocking drugs or if you chopped off perfectly normal and useful parts of your anatomy. When they start pushing that narrative on our kids, and yet at the same time they come back and say, we need to be concerned about the kids, you're not concerned about the kids. You're concerned about pushing an agenda. You heard that from the Minneapolis mayor at that point. And the Minnesota lieutenant governor jumped in the same fray.
Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them. That's what it means to be a good parent.
To believe your child that they know specifically what's good for them? No, a good parent is not a friend. A good parent is putting guardrails in place and saying, no, that is not what you should be doing, and you're not supposed to buy into that. By the way, Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, you were listening to, she was speaking those words while wearing a shirt that had a knife on it, a picture of a knife that says, protect trans kids. Do you not see some kind of opposing, diabolical argument there? A nonsensical argument? To that extent, I won't go back to Jen Psaki speaking out before she had any facts, but she's condemning the fact you're going to pray for these kids and those dead. Does no good. Prayer in this case is not going to be like Lazarus and bringing them back to life. I know that. But praying for the kids that were witnesses to it, that were caught in this hellish incident, and prayers for their children and the parents of the children. But Jen Psaki just wants to denounce praying. Her words, prayer is not freaking enough. It does not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safe. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. It's that kind of attitude, dismissive and absolutely blasphemous, that creates monsters that decide to go out and start killing. Because there is no faith. There is no foundation. You don't have to be a particular religion. You don't have to believe in God, but you would have at least a firm foundation. This guy obviously was off his rocker. Did drugs play a role in that? I want to get into that with my guest coming up, to the extent we know. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
In all these years that Wellington Environmental has been my sponsor, I've never mentioned their duct cleaning services. Allergy season is here, and Wellington crews clean air ducts daily in homes and commercial buildings, also cleaning air handling units and diffusers in commercial facilities. Why? Well, because people will see black dirt and mold on the vents, or they are actually suffering from allergies. Don't be fooled by low-cost duct cleaning providers saying they charge only per vent, because once they get on site, the price will skyrocket. Wellington does not do this, never has. Wellington will give you an estimate, and you say Larry Connors, and immediately you get a 20% discount. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 314-644-4930. Make your home and business better, safer with Wellington. Be well with Wellington. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. The Oak Street Inn and Lounge has some great news. The Speakeasy will now be open on Sundays, starting at 2. Open to the public. Great for those in the industry who'll want to enjoy a Sunday fun day. Plus, enjoy sushi and cocktails. What more could you want? You want to make sure you get the code. And how do you get the code to the Speakeasy? You go to the Facebook, Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. I'll see you at Oak Street Inn and Lounge in Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest had worked with Dr. Peter McCullough and the primary author of their best-selling book, The Courage to Face COVID-19. And John Lesky joining us now, or Leak, I'm sorry, John, I apologize. Author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, the latest book. I want to get into that in some detail because so many folks are absolutely confused right now and lost when it comes to vaccines, especially with their children. But before we do, I know you don't have firsthand knowledge directly with this shooting that took place yesterday in Minneapolis, but we know that this was a transgender. Do not know at this point if they were undergoing puberty blocking or anything of that nature. But what has been the risk that has always been concerning when you start putting kids on these kinds of drugs?
Well, the risks are enormous. The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, asked Dr. Peter McCullough to do a full literature review on everything we can find out about this so-called gender dysphoria medicine. And what we have discovered is that most of these children, there's a long-term study out of Canada, which is very plausible and very persuasive. Most of these boys at the age of 13 or 14 that start feeling like, maybe I'm a girl. The best studies that we have on this is that most of these boys are actually gay. They're struggling to come to terms with that. And if you just leave these boys alone, quit making suggestions, quit encouraging them to get into this perverse procedures, they'll just come to terms with the fact that they're gay. And so, I don't know how your audience feels about gay boys, but this is a much more manageable
It's a fact
thing.
of life. It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
Same thing it is with gay girls. Yeah.
So the point is just leave them alone. If they need counseling, if they need to talk to somebody, then that's great. But this quickness to start intervening in the pubescent body, the hormones, and not to mention, what does a 13 or 14-year-old child know what it means to be a sexually mature adult? Nothing. They have no idea. That's the whole point of adolescence. It's a transition phase, which is full of all kinds of confusion. But then you grow up. It's called growing up, and it's called growing pains. So we see this as basically, if I may speak metaphorically, a satanic enterprise of butchery.
Right.
And perversion. And the only reason why the medical profession dropped its entire ethics on this is because during the Obama administration with Obamacare, transgender medical procedures were made payable by some of these federal medical programs. So once the money pot was made available, then you saw a corresponding ethics be damned. There's so much money in this. Because don't forget, this is ongoing procedures, the puberty blockers, and then ultimately, it could culminate in surgeries, reconstructive surgery. So you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, possibly per patient.
Well, how much? It is a Pandora's box, but what is your learned opinion that's how these drugs can affect these young minds and make them more unstable and maybe push to a point of this event that happened in Minneapolis? We don't know that for fact, but just asking.
Well, so there's two things to bear in mind that should always be examined very, very carefully. The first is that a lot of these children who complain of suffering from so-called gender dysphoria, a lot of them are autistic. So, we go back, to now, and this is a major theme of our book on vaccines. What has caused, since the end of the 80s and 90s and getting into the 90s, this dramatic spike of autism spectrum disorder? What is causing that? And what our public health people will say is, well, we don't know the causes of autism. We just know it's not the vaccine schedule. So we call BS on that. You can't say that you don't know, but then definitively rule out an environmental cause like these children receiving all of these injections. So that's the first thing that needs to be examined. The second thing is we have self-reporting, particularly from boys who say, I'm going to transition to becoming a girl. They themselves describe becoming highly emotionally unstable and irritable. And there was a transgender boy going into a girl in Australia who walked into a 7-Eleven with an axe and attacked, I think, 7 people with an axe. I mean, by some kind of weird miracle, they all survived, but they had severe injuries. I mean, one guy got hit in the face with the axe. And that boy, pretending to be a girl, said, well, I'm taking all these hormones, and it's kind of made me insane. Now, that might have just been a way of avoiding a lengthy sentence. If that's the case, it worked. This trans person,
but it is
I think
it is
2
likely.
years.
It is likely, isn't it? I mean,
right.
When you're looking at, again, you're listening, John Leake, the author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. In the midst of that book is clear we don't know the effect, and then when we do see the effect, sometimes we're ignoring it.
Well, and you see, I mean, Minneapolis has become a kind of petri dish of left-wing insanity. You're because right. the mayor, the governor, the whole place is, the inmates have clearly taken over the asylum. Tim Waltz, I mean, what kind of a bizarre creature is he? And the greatest concern that the mayor of Minneapolis expressed is, I don't want this blowing back on transgender people.
Right.
You think, well, what about the dead kids?
Yes.
And their parents. So I just, you can talk reason, and you can perform proper scientific analyses and studies, but I mean, if your leadership class has lost their minds, how is reason and truth going to make a difference?
Well, the Minnesota lieutenant governor,
what's happening.
The Minnesota lieutenant governor was expressing the same thing you were just saying that the mayor had, and while she's doing it, she's wearing a shirt with a knife pictured on it that says "Protect Trans Kids." What kind of message is that?
These people have lost their minds. I mean, at best, they've lost their minds. More likely, they're malevolent.
Yeah, or idiot, I would add, on my editorial side. Are we going to see?
You there, sir?
Yeah, I can use that word. The vaccines that we have,
you there?
Are we going to be revising and deciding?
Really went away.
We're going to. No, we're right there. We got you right there, John. You hear me?
Are you there?
Okay, John, we're here. You got us? Well, for some reason, the gremlins again have cut out our guest. Boy, talk about me going ballistic. You were listening to John Leake at that point, author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. He had worked with Dr. Peter McCullough, and primary author of that best-selling book, The Courage We Face COVID-19, and this latest book dealing with failures never mentioned in some of this. We've got you back, John, let me give you the last minute to sum up some of your work in your book. Well, tell him.
I'm here.
All right, well, go ahead.
I've actually never lost the line. You guys just keep cutting out.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, John, go ahead. If you can hear us, tell me.
Yes, sir.
Give me the last minute here for talking about your book specifically.
Yeah, well, so Dr. Peter McCullough and I were neighbors here in Dallas, Texas. We've written one book together about the COVID-19 pandemic response, specifically the suppression of early treatment. Like Dr. McCullough is trying to keep people out of hospital with early treatment protocols, and our federal health agencies and our hospital systems just ruthlessly suppress this. So the question is why? And the evidence shows that they were all keen to roll out this new COVID-19 vaccine. It's a new generation of gene therapy shots. And they didn't want anything taking the momentum out of this program. Like, in other words, if it's a mild illness or if it's an easily treatable illness, why do we need to take an experimental emergency use authorization shot? So that's what it looks like. And so we thought this is all really pretty deranged. What are the historical roots of this enterprise? So we go all the way back to the early 18th century, the first smallpox inoculation campaign in Boston in 1721, and we look at the whole history of vaccines.
All right, John, I want to thank you again. Sorry about the interruption. John Leake, author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We'll do it again. Coming up, who's to blame for us not getting hostages out of Gaza?
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies, and PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. You want the best place to watch baseball or any sport and be able to enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys? Lit Cigar Lounge. Lit has so many events each month. You need to constantly check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. You don't want to miss anything. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Hey, looking for windows that solve your problems and actually add value to your home? Renewal by Andersen. Andersen products increase your home value by at least 15%. Right now, get $329 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door, and ask about our zero interest plan for 3 years. Renewal by Andersen, the full-service replacement division of Andersen. That's a name you've trusted for more than 122 years. Renewal by Andersen has FiberX frames, 20% stronger than vinyl, built to last. It's why we have more 5-star reviews than anyone in St. Louis. And only Renewal by Andersen backs it up with the nation's best warranty. Schedule your complimentary consultation, rbastl.com, or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Andersen, superior products, exceptional service. Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. Means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is NewsTalk STL.
Change, change, change. 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 Change, change,
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Who is holding up the end of the war more, Israel or Hamas? Hamas, 100%.
Yes, there's been a deal on the table for the last 6 or 7 weeks that would have released 10 of the hostages out of the 20 who we think are alive. And it was Hamas who slow-played that process, and it is Hamas now who's saying we accept that deal. And I think in large part they're saying that and changing their mind because the Israelis are putting some very intense pressure on them.
Yeah, Israel's not letting up on the pressure. And Hamas could ease the pressure by releasing hostages and bring it to an end. But they know that is their last chip to play. And they're holding them. You're listening then to Steve Witkoff on behalf of the White House saying, we have done everything. We have a deal on the table and have for the last 7 days that would free the last of these hostages and basically end Hamas. That's the part they won't buy into. I say they, the members of Hamas that continue to hold out. If I were to guess, and it would be strictly speculation, there are members of Hamas in Gaza right now that say, let's be done with this. We're never going to get anything more. We're not going to achieve anything else. I don't want to die for Allah anymore. I don't want to die for in the midst of this. Let's just move on. But, of course, they have leadership that tells them otherwise and threatens them. If you look at why some of this is taking over, many Americans, the Times of Israel points out, have been seeing a lot of famine in Gaza. And they blame Hamas if they're doing it correctly. 18 and 24-year-olds are backing Hamas over Israel in the war. A poll finding most Republicans hold the terrorist group responsible for the crisis. Democrats are split. Most Americans back offensive and defensive military assistance to Israel. Again, this is according to the Israeli Times of Israel. A majority, 61%, hold Hamas responsible for the famine. How can you not? I mean, we're trying to put things in there. Hamas steals it, intercepts it, takes it to the black market or gives it to their fighters and to maybe some of the citizens, maybe a little bit to the hostages that are still alive. The survey found 69% do believe there is famine in Gaza. I have no doubt that's true. I want to know about if 69% believe that, why do we have basically 21% thinking there is no famine in Gaza? Are you an idiot? More Democrats, 78%, believe the accusations that there is famine, but they blame Hamas not for it, but for what we're doing in Israel. A slight majority of younger respondents did blame Israel. Thank goodness most of those aged 25 and older hold Hamas directly responsible, as they should be. Trump has been doing everything he can, trying to deal with that, Ukraine, taking care of other little wildfires between India and Pakistan, things of that nature from time to time, still trying to run a nation, trying to bring peace and safety to the streets of U.S. citizens, cities, I should say, such as D.C. and others. And yet he remains a punching bag for the left. Carolyn Levitt of the White House says that is not the way Trump is being seen by world leaders.
Russia and all countries around this world actually respect the United States again, and the president is using the might of American strength to demand that respect from our allies, our friends, our adversaries all around the world. And we've seen that not just lead to progress with Russia and Ukraine, but also we've seen it in the closing of 7 global conflicts around the world as well. We've seen it with the release of hostages in Gaza. You've seen it with the end of the conflict between India and Pakistan, which could have resulted in a nuclear war if we had not had a president who believed in the strength and the leverage that comes with the job of being the President of the United States of America.
You know something else he's considering? This is mind-blowing for some people. And I've got an open mic here. I'll shut down. I don't know where that sound came from. Trump is considering, he's not giving any details right now, but he's floated the idea, make this a trial balloon. We have a Republican National Convention ahead of the midterm elections. That's going to put the left really in deranged territory. Not offering any details about when it would take place or where, but he says, I think it could be beneficial for our party. Yes, the GOP is fighting to maintain control of the House and Senate for 2026. And he said the Republican Party is doing really well. Millions have joined us in our quest to make America great again. We won every aspect of the presidential election, and based on the great success we're having, we're poised to win big in the midterms. So he's suggesting maybe we have a national Republican convention ahead of the midterms. Oh, that's going to put the left, they're really going to pull out their hair and set the rest of it on fire. As he adds, we have raised far more money than the Democrats. We're having a great time fixing all of our country, destroying mistakes made by the Biden administration, watching the USA heal and prosper. Results are incredible and happening at a record pace. So I think you may be right. Why should we not go ahead and maybe move forward with a Republican National Convention before the midterms? Oh, and when it comes to job approval, there's an Associated Press report out, a new survey I should point out. Trump's job approval rating after 6 months in office, 2 weeks after ordering the National Guard into D.C. to stop crime, his job approval rating jumped 5 points. 5 points. From 40% in July to 45% today. That is seismic when you look at surveys detailing this kind of information. You get that big of a jump that fast, it says most of the American people believe we are on the right track. But you got 53% that still disapprove. Of what? Of what? They can't point to anything. They're just going to say, I don't like it. There's a perfect example of Trump derangement syndrome. Ignoring the facts that are in front of you just because they don't fit your narrative, and it might make Trump and America stronger. And many on the left have such contempt for our nation, they don't want to see success. I'll take you back to the days of Rush Limbaugh when Obama got elected. And Limbaugh made a remark saying, I hope he fails. I don't want him to have success. I know what he meant in the sense I don't want his agenda to come to pass. But I don't want our president to fail, regardless of who it is. If it means improving our nation, protecting our nation. And I said that at that point, and I got flashback immediately from some because they were great Limbaugh fans, as I was as well. But I don't want our president to fail. I don't want some of his policy agendas to become law. So if we're talking about failure based on that, yeah, those I would like to see fail. But overall, no. Ron DeSantis talking the other day about California continues under Newsom to claim they're doing everything great. And we look at what we're doing in Florida compared to California, I think you better recalculate.
We have talked about Florida being number one on so many categories: economy, new business, higher education. And he says California's number one. But, to be bipartisan, I do have to acknowledge under Gavin Newsom's leadership, California, they are number one in a lot of things. They're number one in homelessness. They're number one in public defecation. They're number one in tent cities on sidewalks and in public places. Yes, they're number one for highest income tax in the country. They're number one for highest sales tax, number one for highest gas tax, and they have the highest electricity rates in the continental United States. So they are number one in a lot of things, just not the things you'd want to be number one in.
I don't think so. I do not want to be number one in public defecation. That was one of the ones he slipped in there. I didn't want it to slide by entirely, because if you see it on your sidewalk while you're walking, you won't ignore it. And you can tell it's not a dog, it's a human being. That's what they're doing all over California. This truck driver the other day, they got a commercial driver's license in California. Also got one in Washington State, by the way, even though apparently he couldn't pass the English test, nor could he identify more than one road sign. He's the one who ended up in the state of Florida making a U-turn in the middle of a crossover, which he shouldn't have been doing, and the vehicle slams into his truck, killing 3. Well, there's more to that story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. So add that to Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and don't forget about Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, plus now, open, Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
Obviously, this defendant could not speak English. We gave him a test after. Couldn't understand English, wasn't proficient, and couldn't understand road signs. He was pulled over for a speeding ticket before this crash in New Mexico, and he clearly couldn't speak the language, understand the language, or understand road signs, and they let him go. They didn't take him out of service. Had they taken him out of service, we may have 3 Americans that would still be alive. In regard to California, it's a requirement that when you get your CDL, you do have to take the test in English, and you also have a skills test. There's no way in hell this guy could have passed those tests but for some really shady behavior in California.
Yeah, I agree. Secretary of Transportation Duffy said this guy never should have been given authorization to drive a big rig. Now, you take the company that hired him, there are going to be a lot of questions there as to, did they look at him closely enough, or did they just show up, say, I got a CDL, maybe you can't speak English in saying it, but they give him a big rig to go out on the road. They're going to be on the hook as well, in addition to the charges he's facing. And yes, there's a petition out there of 1 million+ signatures. Don't treat him harshly. It was an accident. He didn't mean to kill. I know he didn't mean to kill. But you do have penalties, severe penalties, for negligence that leads to death. You know, of course, the Abrego Garcia case. MS-13 member. They got arrested by ICE originally and then got released. And then he got picked up again in a roundup and got sent back to his home country, El Salvador. And one of the Minnesota legislators went down there to plea his case, claiming he's one of my citizens. He's not a citizen at all. So they were not going to be allowed to deport him to his home country. So they're holding him still. You know what this guy is now doing? El Salvador won't take him back. We're not going to keep him. And he now realizes he could end up being deported to Uganda. And suddenly, he's asking for asylum. I fear if I go to Uganda, I might die. I just can't find the sympathy for you. Coming up, how the Chicago mayor insists what I'm doing in fighting Donald Trump and putting federal troops on our streets is like fighting the Klan back in Jim Crow days. What? Yeah, that's his story, and he's sticking to it. So what have you learned this hour? More to come in our next hour. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. You and I might have something in common, back pain. I can tell you where I go for help, Esquire Sports Medicine, the spine of St. Louis. They can put athletes back on the field so they can clearly help us. Esquire Sports Medicine, hands-on chiropractic help on Big Bend, just north of Highway 40, 314-644-0885, EsquireSportsMedicine.com, EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number, 636-689-0545, 636-689-0545, or visit priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city, a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer.
That is Mayor Muriel Bowser, District of Columbia, basically praising Donald Trump for putting more forces on the street to stop crime. Now, she has previously made similar statements. Then she'd backtrack a little bit, saying, we don't want them here. We don't want them here for, they're worried about how long they'll be there, and they're trying to federalize they have the right to federalize D.C. But we don't want National Guard troops having to be in our U.S. cities on a continuous basis. But we do want law and order. And she's flip-flopped back again, saying, we clearly are seeing a drop in crime. The last I checked today, there still has not been a single murder reported in D.C. since Trump sent the National Guard in and took over the Metropolitan Police. Other crimes are occurring, but they're down considerably. That's exactly what Mayor Bowser was pointing out. Who out there can argue that this has been a bad decision? No one. Unless you're one of the thugs that you're worried about being arrested. And unfortunately, we still have a lot on the left who are saying that what Trump is doing is trying to make us all slaves again. They want to raise the question. Look, he sent National Guard troops, and talking about sending National Guard troops to cities that have black mayors. You see the connection? They're going to pull the race card again. And one of those quickly to answer with his race card, you're going to hear from in a moment, that'd be the Chicago mayor. Oh, he buys into this 100%. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2, Larry Connors USA. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are, at the same time, being available for you on video. You can watch the program. How do you do that? Well, what you do is you go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. And if you miss any of those, you can always go back and pull them up as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL, at LarryConnorsUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. And reminding you with Larry Connors USA, pay attention, because you are going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You will leave this hour with more knowledge than you had as we began the hour. I promise you. So Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday, we did an extensive piece on him as to how many different times MSNBC anchor Joe Scarborough asked him a simple question. Mayor, would another 5,000 police officers on your street help reduce crime? He never got an answer. And Scarborough went at it 3 or 4 different ways. The mayor once said, well, it's not all about police officers and the number of them. We need a housing. Okay, I understand that housing would help. Well, it's not all about that either. We need this, we need that. Every social plan and program that could be brought to the forefront, he was putting in front of adding police to the streets to bring an end to crime. Why would they fight so hard against that? Because this is the only thing they know. Because they also have in the past created this crisis, defunding police, cutting the numbers. And when the mayor of Chicago did add to his police department, he put them into the detective bureau. He said that way we can solve crimes. That's good. I have no issue with that. But you need officers on the street at the scene of a crime and just on the street to serve as a deterrent. And yes, you do need proper prosecution and DAs that are going to do the job right and judges that are not going to simply let them go without any bail. All of that is part of the issue. But the Chicago mayor now has jumped the shark. He's saying what Trump wants to do by sending troops into Chicago, if he does, it would be another Trump move against a black mayor of a major city. And I'm fighting as hard against them as we needed to fight during the Civil War against Jim Crow and also the Klan and everything else.
All of this pushback against Trump, knowing how he responds to that, could actually provoke him to follow through with this talk about sending in the National Guard when yesterday he seemed to waffle. Could this make things worse, all this pushback?
Could you imagine if, as a descendant of slaves, if my ancestors would have had that same rationale? Let's not fight against the Confederacy. Let's just try to get along and then maybe one day they'll give us our freedom. Nowhere in the history of America or the world where marginalized people have sat silent and idle and they've been able to actually achieve justice and liberation. The fact that you have a unified front in Chicago where we are rejecting the occupation by the military of our cities, that's actually fighting for our democracy. That's what's required in this moment. Leading in this moment takes a great deal of courage, but we stand on the shoulders of so many people that have come before us. We have seen these type of tyrannical acts before. One thing that we know for sure, when we fight back against tyranny, the people united always prevail.
Yeah, they want to talk about fighting back against tyranny, but when it comes to Israel trying to fight for their survival, that's a different story. We're still looking at the disaster that took place yesterday. And President Trump, of course, has ordered flags flown at half-staff today because of the shooting in that Catholic school. Those children in church pews for a back-to-school mass, and a gunman goes crazy on the outside, shooting through windows so he couldn't really see who he was targeting, firing with a shotgun, a pistol, a rifle. Later takes his own life, coward that he is. But 2 of the children actually died in their pews while they're at a Catholic mass. Others injured, some critically. And then the word comes out as we begin to get more information on this 23-year-old, 22, I should say, biological male who identifies as transgender. Still looking for more details and information to back up how many puberty-blocking drugs was this guy on, if any? What other drugs is he on as he's going through transgender transformation? And does it play a role? Well, we don't know. But I do know this. The Minnesota mayor came out and said, don't try to attack our trans community.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity. We got to be operating not out of hate for any group, but out of a love for our children. That's where the focus needs to be right now. A love for our kids. Seeing these kids, not just as somebody else's kids, this horrific thing happened, but what if it was our own? How would we feel then? So, look, we need to be standing up for every community out there. Our Catholic community, too, by the way.
But he really wanted to emphasize the trans community. I have not heard anyone blame the trans community. Maybe it's happening in the streets of Minneapolis. What you do hear, though, is complaints about how the guy had a gun and why he had it and so forth. We'll come back to that in a moment. But even the Minnesota lieutenant governor says we need to protect our trans kids.
Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving health care. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them. That's what it means to be a good parent.
And what it means to be a good parent is to take steps to protect your children, obviously. But taking away the Second Amendment does not do it. And that's where many on the left want to go. Minnesota Congresswoman Klobuchar is making it clear in her view that when it comes to this shooting, just consider this not even a trans guy, just a man filled with hate.
These kids did extraordinary things, but they never should have been put in that position in the first place. This was a madman. He was an all-purpose hater, by the way. Hated groups, left, right, you name it. There's no way to pin an ideology on this, and I think people should remember this as the facts come out about this manifesto. But what I learned from this, once again, is that guns, and we're a proud hunting state. There's a lot of law-abiding gun owners in Minnesota, but there's got to be more we can do.
And she admitted there are a lot of law-abiding guns in Minnesota. But she's quickly trying to get out from under this transgender label for this guy. So he's just a guy filled with hate. Well, obviously he was. And a former firearms expert that the shooter praised in his manifesto met him maybe one time. The guy known sometimes as his title, according to many you might have seen or read somewhere, is the AK guy, Brandon Hera. He was named specifically by the shooter in his manifesto as somebody that should be looked up to. The firearms expert says this shooter was a schizo.
The evidence is obvious. There is a...
We'll come back to that in a moment. This guy was a schizo. But it does not mean that he wasn't involved in some drugs that might have pushed him to that level. And if you look at the drugs some of these people are taking, you have to realize there's a lot going on inside their body. But Klobuchar wants you to walk away from that. Just say, it's a guy filled with hate. Oh, and by the way, she's now calling for a national assault weapons ban. There it is. They've circled the wagons again. What is an assault weapon? A hammer is an assault weapon. You know that, don't you? An axe, a car. But we want a national assault weapons ban. And when she just finished saying she has a lot of good people in her state that are law-abiding and have weapons. And I would bet many in her state have the so-called assault weapons, whatever you want to label that. And they're not out there killing. If guns were the problem, we would know it, because it's already been pointed out there are more guns in our nation than there are people. Jim Hansen is a former special ops officer, and he says, you look at this guy, there's a lot wrong with him.
The evidence is obvious. There is a video showing that this person prepared a voluminous collection of weapons and magazines, all covered with slogans that might as well have come from the indoctrination of the woke left. They have created a collection of now shock troops and terrorists who are putting the same ideas that you might hear from high-ranking Democrat officials. Trump's a fascist. Israel must fall. Anti-corporate slogans like sponsored by BlackRock. The left is responsible for this. They created this monster, and it's time for them to stop radicalizing these people who are delusional.
And they're taking advantage of someone who's already unstable. And they're giving them drugs that make them more unstable. The police say the guy got the guns recently, apparently in a legal fashion from what I've seen so far. There'll be more investigations into it. But if they want to think that if we take guns out of the hands of every U.S. citizen, we'll be safer, I'm sorry, you have to go back to that statement that then only the criminals will have the guns. And they don't want you to think guns would save those kids. Yes. If they'd had police on duty serving as just an officer in the school, the shooting might have stopped it sooner, maybe not. If they had staff members trained, maybe that would have helped. None of that makes any change to the heartbreak of the parents who lost a child yesterday. Nor does it take away the possibility of something like that again. But our Health and Human Services Director, RFK Jr., said some of these sex drugs they're giving and some of the other psychiatric drugs, they certainly could be contributing to violence. As we move forward in the next segment, I should point out, we're going to deal with drugs and how they do affect and maybe lead to this kind of violence. If they're already unstable, they're not sure if they're even a boy or a girl, and now you're giving them drugs that put them over the edge. Yes, the left is responsible for that. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. I've got a great evening planned for you. We start with dining at the Oak Street Inn Lounge in Cottleville. We enjoy sunset on the rooftop, then down to the Speakeasy. Just one visit, you're going to see why I'm always talking about the Oak Street Inn and Lounge. Plus, you might want to plan a staycation, a romantic getaway. Check out OakStreetInnandLounge.com for various events this summer. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL.
And it's bad, Leroy Brown, the baddest man in the whole damn town. Better than old King Kong, meaner than a jungle.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
One thing is clear, you are dealing with a person who's trans, that was transitioning. Are you going to be examining at all some of the drugs that are used in order to make that transition happening, to see if it plays a role? Because we also know there was a trans shooter in the Tennessee situation.
Yeah, we are doing those kind of studies now at NIH. We're launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. Many of them on there have black box warnings that warn of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. So we can't exclude those as a culprit, and those are the kind of studies that we're doing.
So I've never seen that medicine, but you're saying that if you get it, some of the side effects could be homicide, suicide?
Well, there are black box warnings on some of these psychiatric drugs that warn about, in their clinical trials, that they saw suicidal and homicidal ideation. So, we are going into that with an open mind.
That is Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., in an interview of Brian Kilmeade, referencing the shooting that took place in Minnesota. This was a 22-year-old going through transition of some type. We're not sure at what stage he was on, but he was a boy transitioning to be a woman. Biologically messed up in his head in all kinds of ways. Then you add drugs, if he did take some of these drugs, and who knows what other damage it did and what it might have done to push him over the edge. There is, as you heard from RFK Jr., there are black box warnings on these drugs. Warning of, you see that on any drug you get nowadays. By the time you finish reading the possible cause and side effects, you may decide, hell, I'll just live with what I got. It can't be worse what could happen here. That's legitimate issues and concerns. As a result of those kinds of remarks, Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, Democrat, of course, is blasting RFK Jr. just because he suggested psychiatric drugs given to children could partly be to blame for school shootings. She wrote on her social platform, "I dare you to go to Annunciation School and tell our grieving community, in effect, guns don't kill kids, antidepressants do. Just shut up. Stop peddling bull stuff. You should be fired." Kennedy has long argued about these SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They are antidepressants. They can increase serotonin in the body and lift the mood, but they're often overprescribed, especially for children. So that's what Brian Kilmeade was trying to ask about this 22-year-old. Here again, he says now it's 23. I don't know the real age. I don't know anybody that has it right. I've seen it both 22 and 23. And yes, conservatives are seizing on the fact that the guy was battling gender identity, and some using it to portray all transgender people as mentally ill. You know, I'm going to have to say that if you want to chop off perfectly good, useful parts of your body to change your sexual makeup, but you're not really doing it, you're still either born boy or girl, the chromosomes are there or they're not, then I would say, yes, you are suffering some mental illness. That does not mean that you're going to go out and kill anyone. But who knows how someone's going to handle it. Women who suffer postpartum depression, they're often given a lot of drugs. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it makes things worse. There are numerous cases where mothers have killed their own children with the depression. So you can't just say it does not have a cause and effect. The Minnesota senator is correct. The drug itself, she said, I dare you go to that school and tell the kids or the grieving community, guns didn't kill those kids, antidepressants did. She's accurate to the extent that a gun, a bullet from a gun, killed the kids, not an antidepressant. But what set things in motion? And this particular guy that they're looking at right now, be 22 or 23, he was assigned male at birth. At age 17, he wanted a name change. He wanted a female identity. There are court records to that extent. So RFK Jr. said, yeah, we are going to announce, and did today announce, we're going to launching more studies on the potential contribution of some of these drugs and some other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. He said the SSRIs drugs, again, to help you understand that, that's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, if that helps you understand any more than I do. But SSRIs, he said, are not used to treat gender dysphoria specifically, but can be prescribed for depression, anxiety, other mood disorders that are experienced at especially high rates among transgenders. Could that be because they're already got so much stuff in their system and in their head they don't know if they're male or female? And, of course, there are other chemicals that could be contributing. But all of this is reigniting a nationwide debate over gun control. Senator Klobuchar, Minnesota, already pushing again, we need a ban on assault weapons. What is an assault weapon? And you're going to have others step forward, too. Jen Psaki, now with one of the networks. Quit your praying. Your praying is not going to stop this from happening. I don't know that prayer won't stop it from happening. But she would rather spit on people in prayer than accept the fact that that might be the way I'm finding some peace. She said prayers are not going to bring the kids back. That, in a general statement, would be true. But we know the story of not just Jesus, but Jesus and Lazarus and others. Your heart has to go out to the parents today, thinking about just yesterday their child was in their arms, kissing them goodbye and going off to their Catholic school and later to a mass. Then they get a call that there's been a shooting. And your child is, if you're lucky, wounded, but not critically. And certainly not among the dead. The debate over gun control, mental health, school safety, obviously ratcheting up because we're going back to school time. Means not only grade schools, but universities. And one of the issues that stands clear in the world of education, if they put up signs, no guns allowed, who do you think is going to come in with a gun? Someone that wants to create harm and chaos and know basically it's going to be a free shooting range. Schools and church events that take the precaution of bringing in police officers uniformed or authorized teachers to carry those that can trust that will act appropriately, or simply post a sign, guns are carried by members of our faculty. That might stop some of this. They will admit, yeah, there are more guns in the nation than there are people. Well, if the guns were the issue, I think we would all know it by now. Coming up, dealing with Mondani and what he's trying to do to New York City, destroy it. Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545. 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545. 689-0545. Or go direct PRIGlobal.ai. PRIGlobal.ai. Hey, looking for windows that solve your problems and actually add value to your home? Renewal by Andersen. Andersen products increase your home value by at least 15%. Right now, get $329 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door, and ask about our zero interest plan for 3 years. Renewal by Andersen, the full-service replacement division of Andersen. That's a name you've trusted for more than 122 years. Renewal by Andersen has FiberX frames, 20% stronger than vinyl, built to last. It's why we have more 5-star reviews than anyone in St. Louis. And only Renewal by Andersen backs it up with the nation's best warranty. Schedule your complimentary consultation, rbastl.com, or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Andersen, superior products, exceptional service. You've worked hard for your money, so protect it. Meet my friend Bob Leslie and ask about the Gain and Retain Plan. Leslie Consulting, 40 years in the St. Louis area as a leader in brokerage and risk management. Call 314-721-0066, 721-0066. Oh, and ask Bob how he was the L.A. Dodger #1 pick. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Boom, 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 boom. Gonna shoot you right down. Take you
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Pragmatically, I and others who invest in real estate have tried to get a meeting to figure out what's rhetoric and what's policy. So far for me, it's been crickets. I think it's a mistake on his part. I'm a rational person. I'm only interested in one thing, and I think he has to address this. I get it what he's doing on the rhetoric, everything for free and rents don't go up. What happens on new builds? We need to build a new building. So let's say we need 20% more affordable housing. Love to invest in that. So we go to the debt and we go to the equity markets to do that. So my simple question to him is, look, I understand what you're trying to do, and you got to get elected, but tell me how you're going to do this. I got to put $50 million into a building to build it, just to get it going. And the market's going to want probably somewhere between an 8 and 11% return on the construction financing. And then when I stabilize it, they'll be happy with 7-8% return. You're telling me I have to have frozen rent rates, even going into 3% inflation. How am I going to be able to raise any money for a new build? Not just me, anybody. How can anybody, including you, by the way, you Mr. Free for Everything guy, how are you going to get that money out of the market when the return is negative?
That's as clear as you can make it. From Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank and O'Leary Investment Funds, questioned directly to Mondani, who wants to make everything free and put on rent freezes. How are you going to get anybody to build in New York City moving forward when they don't really understand what you're going to do to them once they start the process, and how you're going to penalize them along the way? There will be more defections from New York City. And it will be mostly those who can certainly make a living elsewhere and have money, and they're willing to take it and leave. Those left behind are the ones that are going to become victims of this new leadership under Mondani, if it happens. I say if, but it is almost an 80% certainty right now that he will be the next mayor of New York City. A socialist, Marxist, communist would end up leading New York City. This is a guy that did not grow up in the ghetto. His family is in Uganda. They have a palatial estate. He and his fiancée went there weeks ago to get married. They're surrounded by armed National Guards. It's a fortress in Uganda. And he comes back and he faces the cameras again and flashes that smile like, I love you. I know you love me. No, we don't. We don't love your ideas, that's for sure. And it's guys like that surrounded by their own bodyguards that don't really worry about what protection you have. And they're more than willing to invest in something that will give them an immediate return, even if it amounts to, quote, a kickback. But O'Leary said, how is the investment community supposed to come forward and continue to invest in New York if you're not answering questions? You're not giving us solid information. We don't want to be at risk any more than what we are. He has no answers because he doesn't think you deserve them. I don't need to give you an answer. Just believe in me. Right, yeah. But Mondani continues to get more and more support in New York. And among those he's fighting is former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo suddenly looks to be like a very good Democrat. Left of right, obviously, but he's not left of left as Mondani. And Cuomo is the one speaking intelligently, saying we can't have this guy come in and take over our city with all of his plans, freezing rent, adding regulations, buying up and taking over apartment complexes and turning them into communes. Even Andrew Cuomo isn't that stupid. And he knows you need big money to get anything done. Mondani is doing everything he can to chase the money and the people around it out of New York. Yeah, he's doing a pretty good job of it. Some might go south. You got great states to the south that have no income tax, no personal property tax. And one state might be a gathering spot because Nashville, Tennessee, Nashville has been really booming and growing. So you don't have to go all the way to Florida. You can find a stop in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, by the way, you're going to learn about a new supercomputer, a supercomputer that Elon Musk has put together. But before you get excited about it, there are already concerns about how his supercomputer could be destructive for the state of Tennessee, or at least its citizens.
In Memphis, Elon Musk is making a play to control the future of artificial intelligence. His company XAI says it has built the biggest supercomputer in the world with lightning speed. Paul Young is the city's mayor.
It represents a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity for us to take our economy to the next level.
XAI says it will create $100 million in revenue and hundreds of jobs. But the digital future needs power, lots of it. These are the gas turbines fueling the supercomputer they call Colossus. They emit hazardous pollutants like formaldehyde and nitrogen oxides, according to the manufacturer.
Just over this fence, you can see and hear the turbines churning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Without them, the data center does not function.
So it's going to be a supercomputer, but listening to the emissions, immediately some folks are going to raise an alarm, and they have. And you heard from the mayor, Paul Young of Memphis, saying, I said Nashville earlier, but Memphis, saying it's going to be a good thing. Well, he was one of those on the inside circle being informed of what was taking place, according to NPR that was doing an investigative piece. Now, NPR might just be going after it simply because they can, and it involves Musk and linkage to Trump in one way or the other. But there's some legitimate issues being raised. They had a June press conference. Again, this is according to NPR. A reporter asked, where exactly is the supercomputer going to be located? Well, one of the responses was, due to global security concerns, we're not at liberty to identify the location. I have a big question. What does that mean? He went on to say this is a multi-billion-dollar investment in Memphis, and the number of jobs generated and investment specifics still being calculated by XAI. A spokesman for the Memphis Chamber of Commerce declined to answer any questions from NPR. It has since been announced that XAI took over a former manufacturing facility run by the company Electrolux. The local utility says XAI would generate 300 jobs, although it's unclear whether those will be temporary or permanent. Currently, the company has 37 job listings. The majority are based in California. Data centers are highly automated. They obviously have few employees. For instance, NPR points out Microsoft employs about 50 workers at each of their facilities. The mayor of Memphis told NPR, XAI, quote, has chosen to go the no incentive route, which means they will pay the full amount in property taxes. And he says this is an endorsement to a get it done attitude in Memphis. Elon and his team dream big. We love that. But this emission issue is going to raise more and more concerns, and maybe legitimate concerns. We already know that members of the Chamber of Commerce of Memphis still don't understand how all this suddenly came to be because they were not in the loop. They got closed out. 1 mile from XAI, across a stretch of the Mississippi floodplain, is one of Memphis's oldest neighborhoods, Boxtown. If you're familiar with Memphis, you might be aware of that. It was the community started following the Civil War, started by formerly enslaved people. They built homes from leftover boxcars. Boxtown still houses the oldest church in Memphis. But today it's a neighborhood, tight-knit community. Brick, wood-paneled homes, tidy yards. Some have American flags. So it's changed. But they're worried about this computer device this close to us. The cancer rate in South Memphis is already 4 times higher than the national average. Life expectancy, according to a 2020 University of Memphis study, shows life expectancy 10 years lower than in other parts of the city. South Memphis has a elevated asthma rate. The American Lung Association already giving it a failing grade for air quality. So with this new XI that's coming up, there are going to be concerns about all kinds of emissions. The factory will be sitting on 200 acres of land, possibility to add 580 more. The main building will be about the size of 13 football fields. And they will have these turbines, as you were hearing them report, that will be constantly going. And they're estimating 130 tons of harmful nitrogen oxides each year, making a new and major pollutant in the Memphis area. XAI does not have air permits for these turbines at this point. They're working on them. And are they going to be able to get it because it's got Musk's name tied to it? I want to go back briefly as we close to the shooting in Minneapolis. And I want to talk it on the basis of the news coverage that was coming out. I'm looking at a piece written in Breitbart, and I've checked it out, and they're right on target with it. No pun intended. ABC News and CNN downplaying the alleged shooter's hatred of Donald Trump and Catholics. A senior Trump official confirmed to Breitbart News that the now-deleted YouTube page belonging to the gunman showed him his manifesto and all of his weapons. In one of the magazines, written on it, "Kill Donald Trump." Another, "Where is your God?" Another, "Israel must fall." And there are several other pieces in the manifesto. What we also have is that the leftists do not want to get into the statements that he is transgender or was. They don't want to go down that because they'd rather focus on the gun, and they're doing that quickly. As I said earlier, Senator Klobuchar said, we need tighter gun control laws. They have extensive gun laws in Minnesota, including a red flag law. But the mayor again says, we need gun control. Every law they got in effect did not stop this guy from getting guns, and no one exercised a red flag law to say, I don't think this guy's stable. He's on puberty blockers and everything else. I'm not sure that guy should have access to guns. Just raise the question. Let police investigate. I'm not in favor of red flag laws if they are abused, but used properly, they can save lives. They can. So what have you learned this hour? What more do you know now that you didn't know when we began? And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA.